I can't be the best version of me and be the best leader for this if I'm not also taking care of myself and giving myself space to think, because that's my biggest role, is to think. Hello. I'm so excited for this. Oh my gosh, Rebecca. Thank you
Finally,
so
we're
much for being here.
talking.
I know.
It's been like a whole new world and a whole new life since we spoke last, hasn't it?
I know. I literally, for everyone listening, just said to Rebecca, I was like, I have got so much I want to talk about, but I think I just need to hit record as well. So we're going to end up saying everything before I hit record. But firstly, congratulations on your new book, Your Soul Had a Dream and Your Life Is It. Like, one, I bloody love that title.
Oh, thank you so
Amazing.
much.
And I'm really excited to read it. I feel like this is like literally speaking to me. And I'm really, really excited to have like a really honest conversation. I watched a video you did actually, and you were talking about your book, and you were talking about the deep changes that you started to experience in 2016. And you said something, I actually wrote it down. You said, we know we're not who we once were, but we don't know who we're becoming. And I feel for me, over the past 6 years, like actually it started when I had my son Casey. I felt this enormous change in myself. And I think you kind of call it like dark nights of the soul. And all of us go through these like challenging phases, or we kind of lose ourselves, or it's kind of like we're reborn. But for me, over the past like 6-ish years, there's been so much confusion. I felt so lost, and it's been so hard at times. And there's been times where I felt so alone, and it's also had a massive battering on like my nervous system. I'm really excited to talk to you more about this and all of that stuff. And I just don't know that we talk about this enough. And I think with social media, especially, I know there's a lot of people who I follow where it is a lot of go, hustle, like keep pushing. And I just kind of really been questioning all of that. And I recently was really questioning the difference of like force versus flow and all of these different things. So I'm really excited to get into this, talk about this, because I know that obviously you've had 2 kids and the changes and the changes
I think
when you've got a business and all of that.
Well, I think there's just like so many layers in all of that, Carrie. Like, I think first of all, it's like I don't know anyone on the planet who isn't going through some kind of rebirth or change or whatever. And that's always been the case, but never more so than now. Like what we have all been through over the past 6 years is epic. And I think it's interesting as well, like the position that you and I sit on. I think you had your kids slightly before me. How old are yours?
Yeah, Casey's about to turn 6. So
6,
2018 it was.
Yeah, so about a year before me. So Sonny's about to turn 5, Goldie's almost 2. And but yeah, like I had Sonny literally months before lockdown.
Yeah.
And so I think everyone on the planet, like we're collectively been going through quite a dark night of the soul, I think. And you know, that doesn't have to just be depressive, you know, these are the times that make us as well. Like, and I think that I've been in such a deep dive. It's been so interesting. And what I'm like discovering, I'm always brought back to nature and the power of nature and the seasons and all of that, and how it can really help us say yes to who we're becoming, but also like say yes to the energy within our business. Because yeah, gosh, I know I look back and I'm sure you have echoes of this, of like particularly starting out. I mean, I was in my early 30s when I began my business, and I didn't have kids. I wasn't even in a relationship that had ended. And so I like put all of my life force into creating that. And yeah, I definitely hustled, and it was what I was meant to do at that point in time. But you then realize this is not sustainable. Like we are not separate from nature, and nature is not in full bloom all year round. And so, and so when we go through these phases, and the most extreme being like dark night of the soul, it really is, it's the winter, you know, but we know what comes after winter too. And if we resist it, that spring, the life force of spring, it's just going to be more watered down, you know?
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. I did a sound bath at the beginning of the year, and the lady running it got us to all pick these cards. And the card I picked was about, it was something about how all the leaves have to fall off the tree or something about rebirth, basically. And I was like, I feel like the past few years have been like, oh, so much, such a lot. And then I got that card and I was like, is this the year where it finally, like, I just like let it all go? But kind of talking about business, and like, I'm the same, like at the beginning, I just like was working all the time and it was really fun. And I always thought, like when I saw people who were like burnt out, I was like, how do they get to that stage? Like, how do they not listen to their bodies? And then I always thought that'll never be me. And then over the past few years and in this year, I was like, oh my gosh, like I am burnt out and I haven't even recognized it. And I want to be like really honest and vulnerable. I don't think I've ever been this honest and vulnerable in a podcast before, but I really want to talk about this because I think you've been through similar experiences, and I think probably lots of people have, and we just don't really talk about it. But for me, because I think that we kind of think we keep pretending to ourselves that we're okay when we're not actually okay. And for me, I like having kids. Well, one, that changed everything, because when I had Casey, and I don't know how you felt like after you had Sunny, but like I felt like my world just obviously totally changed. And there was this thing in my life that was just the most important thing ever. Business felt so insignificant. I didn't know what to say anymore. I felt like I completely lost my voice, and it felt, I don't know, it just felt so different. And it was a real struggle for me to get back into the content creation side. And then alongside that, the team was growing and I was trying to figure out managing team stuff. I was making loads of mistakes with the team and handling it all really badly. And that became like really started to take an emotional toll on me. And in 2022, my appendix burst. And when it burst, I remember someone saying to me like what the mind-body connection was between like the appendix. And it was something about like overwhelm, or you just being overwhelmed. So I was like, oh, how interesting, because yes, I am. And I remember putting in my calendar that every Thursday I was going to have a me day, and I was going to take time for myself, and I was going to like, because when you've got kids, like you don't get that time. Like, you know, there was no space to think, there was no space to reflect and process anything. So I put this day in, and I think I probably did it once, and I just was really bad at sticking at it. Anyway, then last year I was actually pregnant, and June came around again. So that my appendix burst in June 2022, and June came around again, and I saw the me day in my calendar, and I was like, oh, I haven't done that. And I deleted it from my calendar. And that week I ended up having a miscarriage and I was in hospital again. I was like, that's wild that it happened to like a year later when I bloody deleted the me day. And I was just like really fascinated by it. And then I subsequently had 2 more miscarriages and also got pneumonia. I was like, what is going on with my body? Like, what is happening? So like going on this journey of, and like I went to see this functional medicine guy, and he was like, you're literally living in fight or flight. Your nervous system is a mess. Your adrenals are a mess. And I was like, how have I let it go on for so long with these changes? Like my nervous system was such a wreck. And I think it's really interesting how for so many of us, we're going through such a lot, and we're trying, especially as women, I think we've got like a lot of, I mean, everyone's spinning a lot of plates, don't get me wrong, but I think, you know, being the mother or being like a carer or, you know, looking after other people and then trying to build our businesses and do all these things, like it's such a lot. And I feel like I'm really interested to chat with you about your experiences of like the changes that you've gone through. And because I feel like a deep change in myself. And but I don't, obviously you're more like, you are obviously more spiritual than me. So I feel like I go and see people, I go to like people for like energy work, and they're like, your vibration is changing. And like when you had your first son, you came out of your body and you're not fully back in it. And I'm like, okay, great, but what am I supposed to do with that? But you probably know what to do with information like that. And I'm like, I'm stuck here. So
yeah, well, first of all, like really want to honor everything that you just shared. I've experienced miscarriage too. It's such a huge experience. I know it's completely different for all of us. And also like becoming a mum, birth, postpartum, you know, they say it's like the biggest change that anyone can go through is pregnancy, and then again with postpartum. And particularly those of us who've created a really strong identity. Like we know who we are.
Yeah.
And we've created that. And there's also this image out in the world of who we are as well as that, which is also like based on who we were, not who we actually are.
Yeah.
So that makes it even more complex. But what I think, like, having a baby, but it's not, you don't have to have a baby for this. There's so many other initiations that we can go through, but because it's our joint experience, I'll talk about that. Like, it almost destroyed me, and it made me at the same time. Like, it hurtled me so deeply into my body and made me see through what you're talking about, all of the ways I'd been disassociated, all of the ways I'd been in survival mode or flight and all of that. And like most of those were passed down ancestrally. They weren't even like these things necessarily that I learned from, you know, this thing happened and then I reacted like that. Of course, there's a little bit of that, but what we're talking about here is so deeply cellular that it is really difficult to understand from our linear mind. And I totally hear what you're saying. You're like, okay, well, where am I and how do I get here? And, you know, all of that.
Yeah.
And nervous system healing is the deepest spiritual work I've ever done. And, you know, you could argue it's not spiritual, it's physical, but I think it is spiritual because what I see it as is the separation of soul and physical. And so we're like bringing the two back together. And in my opinion, particularly if we're even remotely sensitive, which I can tell you are, having a newborn, I found it so difficult. I adored my son, but also the way he looked at me with all the love that he did. What love does is bring up anything that's unlike it. And also having a child, there was this thing that I didn't even know about called reparenting, where they say that when your child is whatever age it is, it brings up any unhealed parts of you from that age. And so those early years, it's all pre-verbal stuff. So you don't even understand what it is because you don't actually have a logical memory of it, you know? And so, yeah. And in our society, like mother isn't supported. Like we don't have the big like support systems that we once did. So yeah, just I so hear you with how huge the nervous system process is. There is like so many different modalities that can support it, from like somatic work. So somatic body workers, for example, are wonderful. EMDR, TRE, there's various different IFS therapy is really good as well. But it's going into, I think the thing as well with so many of us who have been in this online business world too, with the dopamine, with the sales coming in, with the, it's like, you know, it's been built on that nervous system reactivity and it's been triggering it, you know? And so unhooking ourselves from it is a huge, huge, huge thing to do. It's a huge achievement to do. And the thing is that it requires the opposite of what we would normally do to achieve.
So right, which feels so unnatural when you've been going and moving, like striving forward for such a long time. It feels odd to actually you know, like I know in myself, like if I don't change and address this properly, I know how the story will keep playing out. And so I have to really do hard things. And I, you know, it's also been like taking a really good look at like the stories I tell myself, the stories I live, the lies I live, and really dismantling that. And, you know, like I have this office and I work with people here, and I realized that I'd started to have a belief system, or the story I was telling myself about the fact that like I had to be in here, I had to be working from here, I had to be here in the really early, I had to be staying later at night. And I kind of started to feel trapped because also my entrepreneurial spark my inspiration like does not come from me sitting here in this chair. It comes from me being outside, going for walks. Like, and I realized like I've not been doing that. Like I haven't been getting
Yes.
out. I've not been in nature because I feel like I have to be here. And I was like, but that's such a nonsense story. Like that's my lie I keep telling myself. And so recognizing actually how do I want it to be and how can I make that happen? So, and I did join the spa and I started going every
Yay.
Thursday, which has been really, really nice. And also talking to the team about this stuff so that they're not like, oh, she's swanning off, but actually so they understand like I can't be the best version of me and be the best like leader for this if I am not also like taking care of myself and giving myself space to think, because that's what I'm like, that's my biggest role is to think.
And it's so much more important or like crucial for you to carve that time out now that you are a mum, because like that was the biggest like shock for me being a mum. I was ready for the sleepless nights and, you know, the hard work. I knew it would be difficult work.
Yeah.
But I and you can't possibly imagine it, but just the literal lack of space and time when that's, and I think it's interesting as well because I don't know what it's been like for you, but for me, I had grown like this big team. When I had Sunny, it was COVID, everything changed, and so we had to pivot with the business. So I didn't really have much of a postpartum. I had a month, but after that it was like you're on.
Yeah.
And so I tried to preempt that with Goldie. And I did a lot better. But even still, like I'd created this team around me, which I then started feeling trapped by, because then I was, it's that classic thing of like reporting to and answering to. And then I'm like, the essence, that spirit within me, which is my magic, which, I can get an idea in a millisecond if I have space.
Yeah.
But if I don't have space, I'll sit there for 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And I think this is the thing. And I like, what I want to just reflect back to you is like everything you're saying, I so resonate with. And I know like how much of a like leader you are for your audience too. So I'm like, I don't know. So maybe in the days where you're like, oh, I feel guilty doing this, like do it for us.
Yeah.
And then tell us about it.
That's a very empowering thing to think actually. But I've been really trying, and we just renovated a barn. Like we bought a house in 2022 and we finally got planning permission to build the house down there, but we had a barn down there that was really like run down, and so we've renovated that, and so it's really nice. It's like surrounded by all the trees. I've got my crystal singing bowls down there, and like I started to go down there and work, and it's just so nice to be in that space, and I can take the dog and we can like go for walks, and it's so nice to tune in, and like you're saying, like being in nature is so healing. And when I think back over the past few years, I'm like, I haven't made any space for that. And also like, when you go on holiday, when you're with kids, like you don't have space. Like I remember when I used to go on holiday before kids, I'd be like getting all of the downloads. I'd be like there, I'd be like so fired up by the end of the holiday, I'd be like so rejuvenated. And like we went to Greece in the summer and it was the end of the school holidays and we had an amazing time, but the kids had gone feral by that point, and they were literally like running off, and like Marley can't swim and they have like life jackets by the sea, and like she wandered out into the sea and was like really quite far out. I was like, oh my God. And it was just like the stress of like feeling like, oh, but what, I'm feeling like a bad parent because like I nearly didn't spot her in the water. And just all the emotion that comes with it and the stress of like, chasing after 2 little kids. It was, oh my God, amazing. But like, there was no part of me that felt like inspired, like from a work perspective.
No, it's actually a lot easier to just go to work and more rejuvenating. Yeah, I totally agree. And then you wonder why do you think my nervous system was on high alert? Well, my kid's about to die in the water. Yeah. And I think this is the thing that for me, motherhood triggered. It highlighted the way my nervous system was running on loop that I didn't even realize before, all the ways, and when you are a mother, for example, like it's meant to, because you literally are like your hormones are built to like look for possible threats and dangers, there's this fierceness that comes in, but I think there's also this invitation to be like, whoa, like how am I regulating after that? Like
Yeah.
after I see my daughter in the water and, oh, geez, like that's a natural reaction. But am I coming back to myself? Am
Yeah.
I calm after that? And that's all information. And yeah, for me, being a mum just like put giant floodlights on the fact that I wasn't regulating as much as as effortlessly as I thought I was.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had all the tools to do it, but in order to regulate myself. But having kids, I didn't have the luxury to do those tools.
Yes.
So it was like, no, I need to get to the bottom of this, you know?
So what does
And
that look like for you now? Like, how do you kind of regulate yourself? How do you, because like, how do we, I think for anyone listening who's like really like nodding along and feeling this, like when we do feel like we've got very limited time, how do we actually look after ourselves and our nervous systems and be like, get to a good place?
So the most transformative thing I did was I found a somatic practitioner. And so they do various different exercises. It's kind of like physical therapy in a way, but it's like very subtle, like does a thing called Hana somatics. And so it's literally just physical movements that you do to bring yourself into your body and regulate. Doing that was the thing that changed things the most for me. There's various different breathing techniques that you can do, obviously meditation, regulating with the earth and all of that, but somatic body work is the thing that did it the most for me.
I have to say, like, because I listen to your meditations and your membership, and when I get out of the habit of not doing it, it makes such a difference because I can
Oh
feel
yeah.
myself starting to spiral. But listening to that, like, just something really like 5-10 minutes, like
Yeah.
every day makes such a huge difference. And I also started to, to jump up, like the rebound, those trampoline thingies. I got one of those and I started bouncing on it and doing like lymphatic drainage and like patting myself down
Perfect.
and stuff like that. And like
Yes,
just even a
anything to
couple of
get you
minutes.
in your body,
Yeah.
because for many of us, we kind of dissociate. So we kind of like part of us is like outside, you know? So
Yeah.
it's like, how can you get in? Same thing. Like if I experience anything like for example, recently there was, in the wild world of social media, something happened and someone left a comment and it kind of triggered me. I could feel myself disassociating and I would have just like overrid that with work in the past, just busy myself. And because I wasn't quite sure how to move that emotion, what I ended up doing was step one, I voiced it to a couple of people who I knew would understand. And one of my friends, she wrote back going, because this person was trying to shame me. And so she said, shame is a tool of the patriarchy. Don't let them do it. Stay in your body. That's the biggest triumph. And so that's what I did. And so I did everything I could to stay in my body. I would walk, I would dance with the movement. Dancing is such a good practice, particularly if it's grief, if it's rage, if it's whatever that those emotions that you can feel in your body but you don't know how to express, particularly anger. Anything you can do to positively process it through your body rather than part of you like separate off and avoid and go into overdrive, that's what you're really trying to do. So it's
Yeah.
really about being with what is and working out how to move it through in the physical.
Yeah. I love that. I definitely agree. I think that movement piece is just so powerful. I mean, I need to definitely practice that more because sometimes when I'm on the rebounder, I'll put like music on as well and just have like a great time. Like, I mean, I know that's not quite dancing, but just like literally like flopping my arms up and down and like just shaking them out and just
shaking
really...
is an amazing tool for it as well, particularly if you've got fear in your body or anger as well. Just literally shaking it out. And these are all good things that you can do with your kids too. So if like maybe something's happened and you've gone, watch out, and then that's given them a fright, which is right because they're about to fall or whatever. You can kind of do it together and be a bit silly with it too. Actually, I think like humor is it cuts through everything, And so like I'll often do that with my son, like if he's feeling a bit upset or angry or whatever, and we'll just like go, you know, and it helped, like it adds humor, but you're kind of doing it together, you know, and likely because we are all connected, if your child needs it, you probably do too.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Well, so in 2016, what was the thing that tip that you started that happened that made you feel like you were going like in
Yeah, right.
this like dark night?
So it was this mystical experience I had, which like when I track back, it's like kind of where it kind of began. And I was in my Kirtan teacher training. Kirtan's a form of bhakti yoga. It's yoga of the voice, so chanting essentially.
Uh-huh.
And in that experience, I literally had, I call it like a unitive experience, mystical experience, where my consciousness was literally hurtled into the center of the earth, into the arms of the Great Mother, and I saw the pathway that souls enter and leave this earth. And then I saw this group of guides that I work with now. I wrote this book with, called The Ancient Grandmothers of the Earth, and they introduce themselves as like all of our ancestors that lead us all the way back. And they kind of showed me all of the ancestral trauma that we all carry in ourselves that is wanting to be processed right now. And that how important it is for us to not just like avoid and override the you know, the anger, the grief, the shame, that all of this, and that if it is safe enough to let it process through our body. And then, so this experience, it was the most intimate, deeply sensual, sweet experience of my life. And it really marked the beginning of the deepest descent of my life as well. Prior to that, I had gone through, I've been tracking the awakening process, right? Through first of all, my personal experience, but also through studying, you know, the mystics of old and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've kind of tracked it as in like, we tend to have the first part of our spiritual awakening, which I call the ascent. And so it's like mind awakening, heart awakening, and body awakening. And so that's like, you know, when you kind of discover like a whole new world and, oh my gosh, like there's a new way of doing things. And it's like your mind is being blown. Heart awakening tends to happen if the first time we experience like proper grief and proper loss. It's that, you know, heart cracked open, rock bottom, but, you know, from the rubble, we can create something with our life.
Yeah.
And then after that, what I'm seeing and what they showed me was that we are all going through this next phase, which is in some level, which is the dark night of the soul, or the descent, where, you know, that expansion from those earlier stages of awakening and of expansion of consciousness. And the planet has been all going through that in some capacity. It's like there has been this extra space that's been created for spirit, for soul to drop more fully in. And so we're returning to our body, we're returning to the earth, we're returning to each other as well. And, you know, we're seeing the division, we're seeing the what's been held in the cells. We've been seeing the dysregulation in our nervous systems. And we're processing that now.
Yeah.
And for many of us, it's really excruciating. And it's always been there. And so just the layer of like us pushing it down, it's like we just can't anymore, you know? And so you drop in, breathe our way through it, let what is be here, and just, you know, it's like, what's the next step for me to do? What's the next step for me to do? But what the triumph of it all is that we find our ground, because we realize that we never had ground before when we were running and running and running and running. Yeah.
How interesting. Do you think that, like, obviously you obviously connect with your guides and things. Do you feel like that's helped you? And how can we all connect with spirit and our guides? Like I always, and I've always done this from a really young age, like asked for like the angels to like be there and help and all that stuff. But it's always terrified me, and I'm not sure why. It's really scary. I had my first reading when I was 16, and she was like, you're quite psychic. And I told her some of the experiences I had that terrified me when I was younger. And she was like, you really need to like close your chakras off at nighttime. And she told me to like put like a like white light around me, and I was like, okay, this is just going around me and it's not coming off. So it really scared me, and I kind of my dad's really spiritual, so we always have gone to like spiritual things together, like even like growing up and stuff, we would go along, and he's really fascinated by it, and like I am, but at the same time, I'm really scared. I actually went to see someone, and she does energy healing. She's amazing. And she was like, I think in previous lives, like you would have been probably like killed for your like spiritual beliefs and what you were saying, but you're safe to like to express, to be the person, but there's still some kind of block. But for people, like, how can we all like connect to that guidance and that wisdom that is around us in spirit?
Absolutely. First thing I want to say with your experiences that you have, like as in feeling that fear and you know, past life and all of that. I would like to add on top of that, you probably have ancestral memory of that because you know, I assume that your ancestry is like of European descent. Like,
Yeah.
that is what happened here, you know, and any kind of connection with the wisdom, any kind of connection to even like nature, any kind of connection to the unseen world was forbidden. Like literally, like we were literally persecuted for that.
Yeah.
And I think that we all hold that memory as well. So just want to kind of honor that. The second thing I would say is the best way that I know is just to, rather than be like, it's angels, it's guides, it's all of this. Like, yes, that it does exist. But it's everywhere too. So it's in the earth too. It's in our ancestry too. I think particularly those of us who have not had wisdom teachings passed down, like in a earth-based indigenous sense, even though all of us have that, if you track back far enough, we haven't been taught this stuff in a grounded way that is normal. And so it's kind of like, oh, what is this? I'm kind of exploring it, you know?
Yeah.
And so the first thing I would say is like, and I think this is what the dark night of the soul, the descent, invites us to do, to see the sacred that's here as well as elsewhere, you know? So it's not just like above us or, you know, better than us or whatever, like most of us have been raised to believe. It's actually, it's in the trees, it's in the flowers, and we knew this growing up, like, and we all have experienced these moments of awe when we're in nature and we gaze at a flower or we see a sunset, like, we're merging with the sacred that is here right in front of us. So that's a really simple way for us to connect in with that unseen world of spirit, just to see the beauty, be in the moment with that. And I think that is something that motherhood actually gives you, because, you know, particularly when you got a newborn, you're like, and you're like, oh my gosh, you have this presence that is so unique.
That is so
and
true.
You're only a second old, you know? It brings you into the moment. And so, and I think this is definitely an invitation when you are, if you are in that phase of life when, oh my God, I used to be able to do sound bowls, or I used to be able to do a half-hour meditation. I fucking can't, you know, this is what I teach. And my morning meditation had to go out the window because, you know, in the morning I'm waking up by a screaming baby, and probably every 20 minutes through the night, I'm not going to be able to get up on a meditation pillow. So how can you bring the sacred into the present moment? And one of the best ways is to see the sacred that's in front of you. Open your eyes to see it. Like, where can you see the sacred now? And instead of being like, okay, angels or spirit guides or whatever, hand on heart, connect in with your heart, your intuition, your soul, whatever you believe, and just take 3 breaths and be like, what do I need to know today? And so ground yourself in that rather than this external thing, because that can be scary, because it's kind of like, what is that? Like, you know, it's like a whole new world. Like, but it's we're connected to that intelligent pulse of life. So I would just say to everyone, anyone who is scared, forget the external and go in and look down too. We can also, I find it, what a lot of us, particularly like in the West, we've not been taught how to connect with ancestors, as in like positive ones from our ancestry.
Yeah.
And in my experience, that's been so healing, because I think that we can feel like, I don't know, like we've been so disconnected from feeling like we're held by the earth, held by what I would call the mother, you know? And that was another thing that really, I mean, it did come up in that mystical experience I had so deeply, but also through becoming a mother. I remember this one moment where I was holding Sonny and, you know, he was crying all through the night. It was one of those nights. And I was like rocking him. You know how you like catch yourself just like
Yeah.
rocking randomly at a supermarket aisle or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was kind of like, I'm like, this is where the rock comes from. And I just had this like knowing that I'm like, I am not able, like something else needs to be holding me in order for me to be able to hold him so fully. And that's when I remember taking a deep breath and being like, okay, I'm calling upon the support of my ancestors here. I'm calling upon the holding of the earth, the holding of the Great Mother. And these beliefs and these practices are in all earth-based traditions, but we've built a society where we've been severed from it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how can we rest into that holding? And that is what regulates the nervous system.
Yeah.
Knowing that we're safe, knowing that we're held, knowing that we're not in it on our own. And I don't know about you, but like my independence was a trauma response for me. Ultra independence. I can do it on my own. I don't need help, you know. But how much is that serving me?
Yeah.
You know, it's not sustainable. And so, you know, and I think that what I see happening a lot is like when we realize these ways that we have been operating and, you know, even like practices or whatever that once served us that no longer do. I see a lot of people these days, because we're living in such a divisive time, going like, oh, that's wrong. This is right. You're wrong. I'm right. But it's just these different phases that we're in and different phases of time too. And so I feel really passionate about like urging us to be like, you didn't get it wrong. It was just like a different phase. Like when I look at you and I, like when we started our business, that was like pure life force, drive, passion. That wasn't wrong. But what is wrong is to override it and think that that season of our life is meant to last until the day we exhale our last breath. It's just not.
Yeah. I think that's such an important thing that you've just said, though, because I think that, I mean, obviously that's where I also have like burnt out thinking that that's who I was. That isn't who I was. It was a phase. It was exactly like you said, it was a season. And I hear you say this all the time about how, you know, like a flower isn't constantly in bloom. And like we are not always in bloom. Like we have these different seasons and we have to recognize and like honor those seasons. And honestly, listening to you, it's just actually healing in itself. And even just the simplicity of just calling in that support and just feel like, as soon as you said it, I just felt more supported even in myself. And I think as well that I think so many of us feel like we've grown up in a society that is so, especially in this Western world, like we're so disconnected. And I often look to like, you know, like in Hawaii or, you know, you're obviously look different, like indigenous cultures around the world where they are so much more connected to the earth and they just seem so much more free. And I think as an English person in particular, like sometimes I feel like a coiled spring that I'm have to hold it together. And I think one of the ways I began to realize this was my inability to let go and actually move my body. Like I could not, I just felt like stiff, really stiff. And I'm like, where is this coming from? Like, why do I feel this stiffness in me? Because that's like, I don't want to be that way. I want to just like, I felt like I needed to take a deep breath in and like just let it all go. And I think that's been part of the feeling for me over this past 6 years of is, that feeling of just like, well, figuring out again, like, who am I, and really truly connecting back to myself, and right, trying to uncover the truth, like not all the lies, not the stories, not the way society is telling me it needs to be, not the way someone on social media is telling me it needs to be, but like truly listening to myself and what feels right for me. And I suppose that's having that awareness of like the season that we are actually in.
It's so true. And I think that's why, like, literally, like, walking in nature is like, it's such a simple but deeply transformative ritual. And I think ritual is like really important because, particularly if you live somewhere really seasonal like you and I do, like, you just walk out right now and you can see the leaves falling.
Yeah.
You can see the crispness. There's a power in there too, and the power in the letting go. And so like, and then if you take it from the perspective of like, which all Indigenous traditions have this, and we all are connected to an Indigenous tradition or several if you track back, and that is that we are not separate from nature. We are part of nature. And I would argue that it's it's the severing from thinking that we are separate from nature above it that has caused so much harm to ourselves, to the planet, to each other, And if that simple act of like developing a relationship with nature and seeing nature as a mirror for you, like I do a practice where it's just like, what season are you in? And what is that season asking of you? You know? And we can be in various different seasons in different parts of our life too. Like our business might be in one season and our love life might be in a different season.
That's really interesting as well to acknowledge. I love this so much, and I'm so excited for everyone to read your book. And I am really blooming excited to read it for myself, because I think that I feel like I felt like a change this year. Like, we can feel like a shift. But I still feel like I don't think the work of kind of connecting more with yourself ever ends. But I think it's just become like a much bigger priority. With you obviously going through this change, like did you feel like it was a period, like, for example, the dark night of the soul that you call it, like, did you feel like it was over a long time? Do you feel like you've kind of come out through a different phase now?
Yeah, I do. But I don't know what that phase is because I'm like so in it, but I'm definitely, I feel like if I am to track my journey, I can see like the upward ascent and then going down. And then I feel like I'm kind of like on the earth now. I opened, went down, and then so that's what I've been noticing and have noticed in quite a few people as well. So but I feel I definitely don't have the perspective. I've studied a lot of what other mystics of old said comes next, which is a form of like union, but as like the marrying of the two. But I do think these times we're living in are different as well. And like, for example, the dark nights of the soul of the mystics of old would speak about, like, I predict that, like, because there's lots of stories of them, you probably would have heard them, like retreating into the cave, going into the cave and living separate from society. And I'm like, did they do that when they were going through the dark night of the soul so that they didn't think they were going crazy in front of everyone else? And I'm like, my dark night of the soul, I had a newborn in tow, so I couldn't really, I would have loved to go into the cave. Maybe just for a night.
I know it's interesting. It's funny as well, because obviously you had Sunny at the beginning of just before COVID, didn't you? I had Marley in the August of 2020, so it was like proper COVID times. It was a weird blurry time.
So were you able to like was your husband able to be present?
He was able to come in, and we had to wear masks. Or maybe he did and I didn't, because that would have been really bad. It was a really, he had to do with COVID. It was weird, but we were actually able to be together. But it was such a bizarre, weird time, and it got a bit blurry. And I don't know whether it was because of that and because I was working from home. I remember doing work stuff and I was on a live and I was literally breastfeeding her and she was literally just off the camera as I did a live, and I looked back and I was like, what was I thinking? Like at the time I was like, oh, whatever, this is fine. But it was such a weird blur.
Such a weird, yeah, exactly. But then, better than being somewhere separate, like it's, and I think, at that time it's just, I just think it's really interesting. And I think the souls that came in around that time, I look at, say, my son compared to my daughter. My daughter came, she's almost 2. So obviously it's been well after COVID for her. There's such a difference and I see my son and all his school friends, and particularly like he's got some boys that he's just like best for, like they love each other.
Aww.
They're all very, very sensitive. And I'm like, is that because of like when they came? Like the whole world was like a nerve on end, you know? And like, who are those kids that chose to come then?
Yeah, true. It's interesting. Thank you so much for coming and chatting with me. And it's been I feel like a very healing conversation, and so powerful, so important. And I mean, in particular, I think for women in this audience who have got so much going on, who are, mums or carers, or, just they're spinning a lot of plates. And also just, I see it a lot where women are just trying to build businesses, but it feels like they're burning themselves out. Like they feel exhausted and drained. And just, I think the whole conversation around healing and really healing the nervous system and understanding that and tuning in with ourselves, connecting with ourselves, even the simple thing you said about putting your hand on your heart, I find that to be one of the most grounding things that I could to do, is to stop and put your hand, but it's just the reminder of that. And even what you're saying is, it's not necessarily even sitting down and listening to a meditation for 5 minutes. It could just be like opening your eyes and looking at everything that's sacred around you and just like having a moment of taking it in, or being in nature. And I just think it's just so amazing to have those reminders and to have this conversation. So thank you so much. And for everyone listening, go and get Your Soul Had a Dream, Your Life Is It. And also, I cannot recommend highly enough Rebecca's membership. Like, it's so good. Is it open all the time?
It is, yeah.
Oh,
at the moment anyway.
The Sanctuary, right?
The Sanctuary, yeah.
I just have it on my I have it on my phone, like opened as a tab. And so I can just kind of go into it. But it's so good. I love all of the audio, the guided like meditations, like all of it. They're so powerful, and they've really, really helped me. So yes, I'll put a link to that as well. So everyone should definitely go and check that out. And all the time, because you do the chanting as well.
Oh yeah. Chanting. So that's a really good thing to heal the nervous system. It's the thing, particularly you were talking about like the fear of the voice stuff. Chanting is my favorite tool.
I did one of your challenges, I think it was last year, and on one of the days it was chanting, and I had never done that before. And I remember I was sat on the bed and I almost didn't want to do it too loud in case it's just my family, they wouldn't even care. But I was like, I felt weird to do it and make the noise. And then I started doing it and literally like tears were streaming down my face, and I don't know why. And I was just like, oh wow, this is really powerful. It was so powerful. And then after that I was like, right, need to be doing more of this. And so like sometimes when I've got my crystal singing bowls out, I'll like just do some of the chanting, and it's really nice. But that being said, I will not I don't get my crystal singing bowls out that often because life is so busy, and while I'm trying to make more time for it, I just don't want anyone to think they need to go and
buy a whole lot of singing bowls.
Although it's something that I do every day, because
it's the power of sound, and there's loads of ways you can just chant along to a track.
I love it. And do you know what else I've got on my Spotify playlist that's downloaded for whenever I need it is your Rise Sister Rise.
Oh, awesome. Well, I've actually
Literally.
released
Oh,
a
God.
couple of extra chants on Spotify now. That Great Mother My Ma chant, which is I think the one that you would have done in the challenge, and
Yeah.
then
Is that on there?
Unbound as well. Yeah, it's on, if you just look up Rebecca Campbell on Spotify,
Yeah, I've got you
iTunes, all of
here
that. Yeah.
downloaded. Whenever I need it, if I'm on a plane or I'm anywhere, I've got you on my downloads.
Oh, I'm honored.
Thank you so much. This has been so amazing. I really appreciate it. And yes, like everyone, go grab the book and go soak it all up, everything Rebecca's got, because it's just brilliant. So yeah, thank you. Really appreciate it.
So good. Thank you.